He's kind of hand-waving over the actual mechanics of how this works to make this claim about a power struggle between black folks and white folks. And that's not to say it's not worth talking about, but it doesn't seem like it's the issue in this case.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Caller, I believe you are on the air. Could you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Hi, my name is Haley. I was a member of the SDUC caucus as of August. So I appreciate y'all taking the time and appreciate Chair Kelly taking the time. It's good to hear from our chair. I will say it's been very frustrating. We joined, a bunch of us joined in August. We were called children. They tried to keep us out. And it's been incredibly frustrating as a new member of the SDUC. In particular, like listening to this interview, knowing that like folks in our caucus have spent a tremendous amount of time trying to get email lists together. Like so much time has been spent trying to get folks this email list. And nobody is receptive to it, right? And so the chair is like, well, you can call me and my secretary will pass it along. And it's like, that's not super comforting when we're trying over and over again to figure out how we can get in touch with the chair. And so it makes it hard to like accept Chair Kelly saying that he wants to like talk to us, support the youth, get our feedback, recruit candidates. It's like there's a whole group of youth that has spent a tremendous amount of time just at that one meeting. 12 hours we spent at that one meeting to get elected to the SDUC. And we want to be there for the party. We want to figure out how we can build a party and move the state forward. And we're not getting that communication. And particularly it's frustrating, like hearing the chair talk about Tabitha instead of focusing on the elections, right? Y'all explicitly said at the beginning, we're not going to focus on that. And he brings it up 3 times. In particular, like to talk about a rumor that he heard her screaming, right? And, you know, explicitly saying, that's not something that I saw, but people tell me she started screaming. And I can't accept that, you know, that's about saving the image of the party when we're spreading rumors about people that are trying to do the work. And Tabitha has been there trying to support us where the chair hasn't. So I would absolutely love to be in contact with the chair. I think it would be wonderful if we had that level of communication and support. But that's not what I have experienced as someone who's new to the state and new to the party and trying to figure out where I belong. And I will say that one thing that I would like for the chair to do in order to sort of fix that division, that lack of communication, is particularly focus on youth caucus, LGBTQ issues, and the county parties, and labor as well, obviously. Y'all have already addressed that. But those are 3 areas in which the chair has a tremendous amount of power to build bridges, the way that he talked about in the interview, right? He can spend time with youth caucus. We have tried to get him in communication with us. He could spend time making sure that queer folks don't think that they're trying to remove the queer caucus if in fact they don't want to remove the queer caucus, which seems incredibly unclear based on his refusal to sort of take a stance on whether or not that would be correct. And even more so, not even just refusal, but suggesting that the reason we have those caucuses in the first place is to dilute the black vote, which is incredibly frustrating in particular because like the youth caucus has to have a certain amount of black representation. And so he's kind of hand-waving over the actual mechanics of how this works to make this claim about a power struggle between black folks and white folks. And that's not to say that that hasn't happened in the Alabama Democratic Party before, not to say it's not worth talking about, but it doesn't seem like it's the issue in this case, and it's sort of a way of avoiding that we're not supporting youth caucus, we're not supporting queer folks in the party. And in particular, the county parties are having to do a tremendous amount of organizing on their own with no support from the state party. And those are the folks that show up to labor events, right? Those are the folks that I have seen out on the picket line, out at support events for Starbucks, out at rallies for the RWDSU organizers in the Bessemer facility. So anyways, I will end my rant, but those are some of the things that I would like to see from the party chair. And I think that we have a tremendous opportunity right at this particular moment to build a progressive Alabama. And so I'm really, really hopeful now that this election is over and we've lost this moment, that the next moment we can do better.
Yeah, I think that...
I really appreciate you calling in, Haley, and sharing your perspective. And I can't imagine how frustrating that conversation must have been from your side of things.
Yeah, well, and you know, that's just bizarre that the email list has been such a point of contention. You know, you would think that would be the first and most easiest thing to make happen, right?
One would hope, and I totally take the chair's point that yes, it's been a messy transition, and there are a lot of things that he is not remotely responsible for. In particular, like he's not responsible for the ways that we failed to recruit for this election cycle, but he is responsible for the way the transition has been happening. And I think that has been happening with a complete lack of communication across the board, except for the folks that are in the chair's caucus, which is great. but also the rest of the SCC should be getting that communication because, like I said, we want to be there for the party. We want to figure out how we build something that works for working people in Alabama. And that's not what the Democratic Party is doing right now, right? Like, we don't have a structure that's a real opposition party. We don't have a chance in a lot of these elections. And in part because there's no support flowing from the state party. And so figuring out how we fix that, I think, is going to take a lot more communication, particularly with the young people and the new members who have ideas, right? Who would love to help with the social media accounts, who would love to help figure out the website issues. We have experience with that. We want to help, and we're just not being even like so much is emailed, no matter how hard we try.
How do yeah, and I certainly do too. I mean, there's no doubt he's busy. So how do you feel about your commitment to the party so far? Do you think that and what would your message be to other people that have listened and that are maybe not involved in the party, that want to get involved in or that want to get involved in something? Do you feel like it's been a good use of your time? Do you feel like it has the potential to be a good use of your time? Or just what are your thoughts in general about being you're like officially to a certain extent like a capital D Democratic Party activist, right? How do you feel about your investment both in time and resources and all that?
Tremendously conflicted, I will say, because I think that it's important to have an opposition party. I think that we are dealing with fascism and we need to make an attempt to organize in opposition to it. And over and over again, I don't see a positive message coming out of the Democratic Party. And so, anytime that I have been in sort of party meetings, I hear a lot of, we need to unite, we need to unite, we need to unite, followed by a lot of bickering, and not a lot of what we're uniting around, which I think is part of the reason why there's so much bickering, is that we don't have clear values in this party, as near as I can tell, which again is part of the reason why we have Yolanda Flowers as our gubernatorial candidate, right? We're putting up candidates that don't have values that one would think of as like in line with traditional Democratic Party values. We're getting a gubernatorial candidate that is anti-choice because we don't have values that we're trying to unite around. And so I will say it's been frustrating. I can't necessarily encourage a whole bunch of people to try and get involved unless they're really, really ready for a challenge. But I knew that coming in, right? Like, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, that there's a long history of division here, and it's going to take a long time to figure out how we build it back. And I would really love to see the chair take the lead on that, right? I think that there's a lot that we can do, but it has to start at the very minimum with, communication and not sort of smearing each other in public in lieu of communicating with each other.
Yeah, Yolanda Flowers anti-choice, and also, I think that like religiously bigoted is like an accurate statement about her views of non-religious people. I think she said something about like atheists are like lizard people or something.
That was not a real campaign. That was not a serious candidate or a serious campaign. Anyone who thinks otherwise is living in a different world. But something you said, Haley, that resonated with me.
A lot of folks, sorry, quickly. I know a lot of folks that wrote in, myself included, wrote in Jared Budlock because we were not able to accept voting.
Or I did too. I don't know.
Sorry, continue out.
Yeah, I was just going to say something you said that really brought up something I had jotted down earlier, which is that, there's been this infighting in the Democratic Party for all these years, dating back even before, Nancy Worley and Chris England. But whether it's, Doug Jones and his rich white friends, or Joe Reed and Randy Kelly and the old black church crowd, let's be real, those are the two primary factions here. Neither faction seems at all interested in engaging with the left. Neither faction seems at all interested in engaging with people under the age of like 50. Neither faction seems at all interested in engaging with labor. Clearly. So, that's what's really been, I've been trying to rack my brain over this all week, is there any point, in trying to save the Democratic Party from itself? Is that even the best time, resource, money, energy use for us as the limited progressive people in the state of Alabama? There's not a ton of people in the state of Alabama who right now today are committed to progressive social change and are willing to do something about that. And so that's what I'm really pondering, and I know a lot of other people are as well, is, okay, so what should we do next? and where should we be putting our time and energy and resources? And is it continuing this, intra-party power struggle that has now spanned for years? And I applaud you for doing what you're doing, and I don't mean to be dismissive of what you're doing, because I think it takes all people working in all spaces where it works best for them, right? That's not my scene, but if you can operate in that scene, I need you there, just like you need me in my scene. But yeah, that's just something that's really been on my mind, and that your comments brought it up for me.
No, it's an incredibly fair question. And I will say I didn't get involved in the Democratic Party until after I was already very involved in, the labor fight in the state and involved in Birmingham DSA, which I would 100% encourage folks who associate themselves with the left to think about joining DSA. I think that we are building a structure within Birmingham DSA that doesn't lend itself to just constant infighting, and we're able to get shit done.
Right.
But I wanted to join the Democratic Party because I think that it has a different role to play than DSA. I think that it can be an opposition party in a way that DSA can't right now. And I think that there's opportunities for collaboration. Now, I don't know if the party sees it that way. I have no idea if that's something that they would be open to. I've certainly gotten some hostility from folks who are members of the party. I've never heard anything from the chair about it. I take your point.
Yeah,
I think it's hard to try and argue for folks to join the Democratic Party at this point. And I think you're right that we do have these two factions. And if we could bring some of these, young Democrats up into leadership, I think it would be tremendously better. The Youth Caucus has been a very different experience than sort of the other Democratic Party meetings that I've been in. So I'd really appreciate if we had some support and weren't constantly threatened with being removed from the STUC, because I think that we have a lot to bring, and we can, figure out how to move beyond these two factions and actually create a Democratic Party that functions and puts up candidates that can win. Which I will say, I will try not to harp on Tabitha too much, but that was what inspired me about Tabitha, is that she will talk about that we need to win. We can't just, call ourselves Democrats and go do things because we're doing things. We need to make a plan to win, because again, we are fighting against fascism. We are fighting for people's rights, for people's livelihoods. And if we don't do that in an organized fashion, the consequences are dire. And so that was something I appreciated, and something I'd like to hear more from the chair is what is our plan to win? Not just, we're gonna find candidates, we're gonna support youth in theory. What is the plan? What's the strategy? What are the tactics we're gonna use? And I just haven't heard that.
Right. And what are the goals? Concrete goals. Are you going to tell me 4 years from now that 100% of statewide offices will be filled, that 100% of legislative offices will be filled? Is that a concrete goal? Should we aim for half? Is that a more realistic goal? I mean, those are the things that we're not
happy.
Yeah.
Right. At this point, if the state Democratic Party could put nominations on the ballot for half of the political offices that were up for election on Tuesday, and if they could send one email a week and have an operating website, that would be a level of competence we have not seen out of the party in my entire adult lifetime, and certainly in Jacob's. And that's unacceptable. That's ridiculous. And it's sad that, people like us having this conversation, the people in our YouTube chat have better ideas than these people have been doing this shit for all these years.
Yeah. So, Haley, I know that there's a small group of y'all in the Youth Caucus that are doing some work inside the party. And I think, outside of the Youth Caucus, in the Queer Caucus and in some of these other caucuses, and I'm sure that y'all have some contacts in the ADC, and so this loose affiliation of people on the left, people working toward, people that are kind of in our circle, so to speak, fellow travelers. How can people that do want to get involved in the Democratic Party get connected with y'all?
I would welcome folks to get in touch with me directly, and I can connect people as best as possible. I also think you may have Robert on the line, and he can probably give you better answers because he's been involved for longer than I have. But I am on social media way too often, so folks can reach me on Twitter, Instagram, and I'm happy to put my email in the chat as well. So I will leave that in the YouTube chat. we don't have as much of a formal communication structure as I would like, and I'd like to build that. Like I said, we've got more formal structures within DSA, which is part of how we were able to organize to to try and do some work within the Democratic Party. But yeah, I think it's an ongoing struggle to figure out how we communicate. And my understanding is that I don't want to speak for people, but my understanding is that even the young Black folks have not gotten communication. So it's not that all of the ADC is receiving communication, because all of the Black members of the party are not being communicated with. Anyways, we would like, all of us would like to be. And I don't know how we make that happen, but like I said, I would love to connect with more folks who feel the same way and are like-minded.
Well, I was joking with Jacob off the air that maybe Dr. Kelly needs to have an interview like he did with us, but with his own caucus. With his own youth caucus and his own committee. And
there's a reason so many of us tuned in this morning. It's because we've been waiting.
Right.
We've been waiting to hear from our chair.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.